Hi, this is Brian Dar with XPM, a Valiantus company, and in this video, I would like to share with you the way that we manage our client engagements. I actually think you'll really enjoy this, I hope. And specifically in this video, we're going to talk about two areas. Number one, the principles behind how we engage. And number two, I'm going to show you the tools for transparency that we use. Here we go. So engagement principles. The first principle is build immediately and together with the client. We don't want to sit around doing a whole lot of upfront discovery and documentation before we dive in. I find often that clients want to see very, very quickly what they're going to get. And so one of our principles is start building as fast as you can. And I think it's important to do it with the client because we don't want to build in isolation. We want to build alongside with you to make sure that that you're guiding us in the right way and that we're helping you make decisions along the way. Principle number two, MVP and iterate. Oftentimes, we will separate the workout between first a minimum viable product and then iterations on that. We don't always do this. It really depends on what the client needs. But in general, we find that it's helpful to build something first, show it off, make sure that leadership likes it, and then iterate on it from there. Some of our engagement models also start out by just doing an MVP. And if people like us, if you enjoyed that first date and you would like to continue the relationship and see what else we can do together, then we might go from a project into a support contract, for example. Principle number three, new experts as needed. So when you engage with us, you're actually engaging not just with the people on your project, you're really engaging with the whole company. If I don't know a lot about a certain product, I'm going to go find somebody in the company to bring them into the meetings to help teach the product and to help build the product with us. And then I get to learn too, which is pretty fun for me. So it's important to remember that when you engage with us, you're really engaging with an entire think tank. And also on the back end, we are, of course, sharing ideas internally, getting ideas from other projects to really bring you the best of breed in solutions. Next principle, training. We don't want to build something in isolation and hand it over and have you not know how to manage it. So we think it's very important to include training in all of our engagements. This comes in different flavors. Sometimes we send our clients to our public classes. Sometimes we do private training. Sometimes we'll do private training for the administrators, or we'll do broad-based user training. Sometimes that comes in the form of live classes, usually live classes, but sometimes it involves recording training videos that people can watch later on. But either way, it's really important that you know how to use the tools that we're helping you implement, and also the processes that we're helping you implement. The next principle, share the load. I think this sometimes comes as a surprise, but depending on the client, I really like to give clients homework. I think that people learn best by doing and working in the tools, and eventually we may not be there in the future. So we want to make sure that, again, you know how to manage your tools. And also, it's important to have people that are closest to the work doing the work. So if there is a complex form that needs to be built out, I think in a very ideal world, we would show somebody how to build that form, and then they would go and build it. Because that way, you can tweak the form to whatever you specifically need. And that saves time going back and forth as well. Next, meetings on a cadence. It's really hard to get a lot of core team members together at any regular time. And so what I found works best is meeting 2 to 3 days a week with at least a day in between to help people get work done. And so, for example, I would meet with clients on Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday, and each of those meetings would be 2 hours each. 1 hour is never enough to get a lot done. 3 hours is usually way too much to ask of somebody's schedule, but most people can manage 4 hours a week for a very important project for those meetings. And those meetings they're not status updates. They are learning and building and making decisions all in one. Next, lead with empathy. This is an interesting one. I think it's really important to throw empathy into all projects that you do. And I say we as a company believe this. So for example, we want to build systems that we also want to work in. So frequently for me, for example, whenever I'm building a system for a client, I am often getting into the system, pretending that I'm a user, and making sure that it's very, very easy to use and maintain. And if in the course of researching I find something helpful, I'll send that information over. Hey, here's a new way to manage this that you might not have thought of. We do this also with something called Genba walks. Genba is a Japanese word for meaning the place where it happens, or where it happened. And so we will ask people to show us the way they do work so that we can offer suggestions for improvement based on our knowledge of the tools. The last main principle, and the one that I'm going to demonstrate the most, is transparency. We think it's very important to deliver transparently when we're working with clients. Nobody here wants to go off in isolation and build something and then turn around and hope they got it right. And from the client side, I know it's very important to be able to report up to leadership about the progress and to do that in an efficient way. So for that, let me get to this next slide here. I'm going to show you 6 tools that are in our toolbox. We don't always use all of them, but they're always available. And they are task tracking, roadmaps, status reporting, work sessions with minutes, documentation, and risk management. There's more too, but these are the big ones to talk about. So let me demonstrate those in the tools right now. So for task tracking, we almost always set up a task tracker in Jira, and usually in your Jira, because it's very important to get things very, very close to you and your leadership. We don't always, we set it up in a tracking environment that makes sense for the engagement. So sometimes it'll be in ours, but wherever we can, we try to put it in yours. I think it's also helpful to use the tools that we're implementing to help implement those tools. That's called dog fooding, if you've never heard of that term. Basically using your own products. And I think it shows, and I think it teaches people how to use those products through the engagement. So this is an example of one of those work trackers. This is a Kanban board, and this is where we would list all of the work that we're doing. There's also a backlog that sits behind that board. Let me just clear that. So you can see all of the other issues that we might be working on. And we'll be updating this board every single day. And then each of these labels, these blue and red items, these are called epic labels, and they roll the work up to larger chunks of work. So if I come to the roadmap, that shows those larger chunks of work here. We have our initial assessment, we have the MVP, we have the iteration that we're going to do on that MVP. And then for anything that comes up during the engagement that is not necessarily in scope and might derail the initial goal of the engagement, we will then add that down here into future enhancements to make sure that we capture that for potential future work together. All right, so that is task tracking. Let me show, and roadmaps. Let me now show you how we manage things from an information standpoint. All right, I'm going to come over here into Confluence now. And whenever we work, I say whenever, it's not always, but often, we will set up an engagement dashboard like this one. And this is for not only collaboration and awareness, but also status reporting. So what we see on this dashboard is a PTO and project events calendar. So we may do project start and end dates, project milestone dates, holidays, PTO, time off, that sort of thing. Over here, we have a history of status reports that we send out every week or two. We don't always do status reports. Again, it really depends on the client and their leadership and what they need to see. So, oftentimes, that project tracking is enough, but if you need a status report, we can easily send one out. Then down here, we have a weekly status update, overall status, summary highlights, any challenges and risks that we're experiencing. The next section is that roadmap over here so that people can see that on the project dashboard, and you can expand information out to see what's in that work. And then for people, for clients that need much more granular updates, we then bring the work from Jira over here into overall progress. So items recently completed, items in progress, items upcoming. And for clients that have particularly defined needs in reporting. We also have a section here, if we need to, where we can even do progress by deliverable. So these would be items tagged as training, items tagged as inspect and adapt, and then we can see progress towards those specific deliverables here as well. So status reporting, very important. The next piece I want to talk about is work sessions with minutes. So we will often track meeting notes, and here is an example of the way that we do that. We would track the participants and the goals of the meeting, and this is one of those 2-hour meetings each week that we have. And then under discussion topics, we might often start with an update by reviewing the Kanban board. We would then tackle open action items from the project implementation team. Not necessarily work items here, but internal tasks like check with other people in a department about certain values that we need to add to a field, or really anything. But we will review those open tasks here, and then we like to tie work from Jira over here into our meeting minutes. So here, work item number 9, create template confluence spaces. We'll have the discussion points that we need to have during the meeting here, and same with the other work items from Jira and the discussion points. And then we can track notes over here. If there's any additional action items or major decisions made, we can also track them here in the meeting minutes. Next, I want to talk about just general documentation. So we like to keep a contact list so that we all know who we're talking with. And then we build solution documentation as we go. So for example, if we build a system with apps, integrations, or particular Jira configurations, we would then include all of that information here, transparently ready to be viewed. If we're building playbooks for process improvements, we can then build out those playbooks down here. And I really like having this stuff open in the client site. Oftentimes, for example, in the contact list, somebody will help correct a misspelling of a name or a missed email address. I just think it's really important to have that transparency while we're delivering together. And lastly, sometimes we will do risk registers. So certain clients, they have very, very high risk projects, and we want to make sure that we're delivering risk mitigation throughout. And so if we have a need to track risks, we will build out a risk register here, and we will show off potential mitigations, and we will bring this back into our meetings whenever we encounter risks in the future. So that is a very high-level summary of some of the principles and the tools for transparency that we use while engaging with clients. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions about this, or maybe even want to work with us, please do reach out. We'd be happy to chat. Thank you so much, and have a great day.